Hello learners and welcome to week 5 of U.S. History Reconstruction to Present. I can't believe it's week 5 already. The year's flying by. Hopefully you guys are on pace, resubmitting assignments and doing what you need to get done. This week we're on unit 1.22 to 1.27. You can see we're continuing on with the Civil War. Some big concepts. We're going to talk about the home front and the effects of the Civil War. And the topic I chose to kind of pull out for the week, Civil War prisoners and kind of what they dealt with in the prisons, from overcrowding, starvation, disease, civilians actually in the town trying to help out the prisoners because it was so bad, because the prisoners were on the bottom of sort of the totem pole of getting food and supplies and different things like that. And by the end of the Civil War, almost 56,000 prisoners had died. Oh, sorry, clicked forward instead of playing the video. Here we go.
When war broke out in 1861, neither the United States or Confederate governments were prepared for long-term...
Sorry about that. Try one more time. Okay.
When war broke out in 1861, neither the United States or Confederate governments were prepared for long-term confinement of enemy soldiers. Initially, troops captured in the first 2 years of war were subject to battlefield paroles that returned them to their lines in a matter of weeks, if not days. In 1862, an agreement formalized exchange policies. The Dix Hill Cartel created a system that exchanged soldiers in equal numbers who were of equal ranks. These exchange and parole policies were problematic from the very beginning. Accusations and confusion about the number of equivalent prisoners happened almost immediately. Commanders were well aware that battlefield paroles also benefited the army that needed troops the most. In 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation opened the doorway completely for black soldiers to enter the United States Army. It would be their presence in the ranks that altered the system of exchanges that summer. Confederate officials refused to exchange black prisoners on the grounds that a majority of them were escaped slaves, and thus property, who were ineligible for military service and could not be exchanged for a white soldier. The Union commanders stood their ground and would only exchange black soldiers and their white commanders as equal. Both the Union and Confederacy were now required to hold hundreds and later thousands of soldiers in captivity. Over 400,000 soldiers were held prisoners of war during the Civil War. Today we stand here at Andersonville, also known as Camp Sumter Military Prison. During the Civil War, it was one of the most famous prisons, as it continues to be today. However, it was by no means the only prison. Each government approached prison establishment in different ways, but both created prisons based on 3 key factors: defensibility, available resources, and transportation. In the North, prisons were shaped out of existing military fortifications like Fort Monroe or Fort Delaware. Some prisons were also built out of existing racetracks and fairgrounds, military training grounds, and other structures. One of the most surprising prisons during the Civil War is on a small place called Bellows Island in New York Harbor. An 11-point star fortification built during the War of 1812, it later became Fort Wood, a recruiting depot and prisoner of war camp for Confederate soldiers. A few decades later, the fort was filled in and became the base of the Statue of Liberty. In the South, many prisons were created in warehouses or open fields. Andersonville and Salisbury are both examples of open-air stockades. The South also worked to centralize prison populations in a small number of large prisons. For example, over 33,000 United States soldiers were held here at Andersonville in August of 1864. Other Southern prisons took the shape of warehouses, or even islands, in the case of Belle Isle in the heart of Richmond, Virginia. After a battle, prisoners were taken to the rear, under guard, moved to a train depot, and transported to the nearest prison camp, sometimes spending days on a train. Upon arrival, they would then be counted and placed inside the prison camp, meeting their new fate as prisoners of war. After accounting, guards were able to seize things that they wanted from prisoners. These items could be clothing, food, or money. Any item that a prisoner managed to smuggle inside a prison could aid their survival. Prisoners on both sides of the conflict faced similar hazards, such as contaminated drinking water, overcrowding, and diseases that passed between prisoners and prison camps. Diarrhea, dysentery, gangrene, scurvy, and smallpox were all conditions that plagued prisoners. The overcrowding in many of the stockade prisons led to a humanitarian disaster, as supplies were not always diverted to the prisoners, but rather pushed to the front lines. In both the North and the South, civilians attempted to aid prisoners as far as they were allowed. Some of the civilians even risked charges of treason to bring food and clothing to enemy prisoners. The Civil War prison system was successful in one major way. Escape was made virtually impossible for a majority of prisoners. There are some daring escape attempts by enlisted men and officers, but the remote locations, well-guarded perimeter, and hostile population ensured that for most prisoners, they would be recaptured, punished, and returned to captivity. However, slave populations were known to aid escaping Union soldiers to try to get to their lines, whether through food, directions, or shelter. By the end of the Civil War, almost 56,000 soldiers died in captivity, both governments failing to protect the lives of their men. Today, over 24 historic prison sites are managed by federal, state, and private organizations. Each site serves as a reminder of the cost of war and the fact that men fought for their lives, not only on the battlefield, but within the walls of a prison.
So I found that to be an extremely interesting video on prison camps during the Civil War, and how, men were sent there because, they'd gone to battle, risked their lives, and they were sent there, and they ended up losing their lives in the prison camps from starvation and diseases. So hopefully you picked up on something from that video. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Just remember to do your Google Classroom and making sure that each week that it is complete and that you are completing the assignment, not just watching this video, which I appreciate, but making sure that you're doing the assignment, checking it off, submitting it, so that I can grade it and you get credit and are not marked absent for that day of the week when I do attendance, okay? So any questions or concerns, reach out to me, and if not, you have a wonderful week. Thanks, bye.